Daniel, thank you so much for having me. We're out in the sticks. We, you're kind of far out here. How did this come to be? Where you're located and really being a typesetter, designer who works with fonts?
Yeah, this all kind of kicked off in 2020, like a lot of people's creative ventures, right? We had a change of path. I had a previous job that I loved and was creative, and I got to work with training young designers and all that kind of stuff. So I was already into typography and graphic design and the history of the craft. That was kind of the start. And then an old friend heard that I was interested in this, and he has a barn just loaded with all kinds of art supplies because he was an art teacher. And he had an old press, which was this one, and some trays of type. And he said, if you're interested in doing this and you'll use it, it's yours. So I got a couple things to start with, and I started making some prints, and they kept selling. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but there was YouTube and there was Facebook. Thank goodness for the internet, right? Because there's no like local resources necessarily here. But there's tons of YouTube videos. This is kind of a small community of people that still practice this craft, because this is very dated. This is old stuff, right? And so it's losing its practitioners, it's losing the materials, and the presses are going away and being scrapped. And so there's a small group of people that are kind of keeping this alive. So they're available on YouTube with lots of tutorials. There's great Facebook groups as well, where you can throw things out and folks will answer all kinds of things for you from all different perspectives, but at least you have a chance of like figuring it out. And then there's things, archives out there with historic manuals for printing and design or presses, which you can dive into, which give you, more assets on top of that. So if you can ask the right questions, you can find the right answers.
I'm looking at all of your work, and it's interesting because as I read all of these different signs, I think it gives me a window into kind of your frame of mind. Right behind you, it says create without fear. What was the scariest part? 2020 was terrifying for everybody. So what was the scariest part about saying, I'm going to stop this spiral with this venture and here we go?
The scariest part, I think, was there's only so much time, there's only so much money, and you don't know necessarily if you're picking in the right direction, right? And something like this, it takes some upfront investment, it takes time to learn the craft, and you're just hoping that you're not going in the wrong direction and sinking a bunch of resources into something that's going to be a failure when you need things to work. But month over month, things keep doing well and people are enthusiastic about this. And that continual feedback loop has helped me figure out how to make things better and what people are interested in, what I'm interested in making. And we just kind of keep following that path and refining it as you go. Kind of hold the dream loose, but just keep charging forward and make great stuff as you go.
Let's talk a little bit about your process. What do you do?
Well, every print starts with a basic concept. And there's kind of a narrow spectrum of messaging that I'm interested in. And a lot of that is kind of on a foundation of encouragement. A lot of times it's for other creative people because a lot of artists kind of get into what I'm doing. They understand this craft, the history. So a lot of it's that, but then there's also issues of faith that I touch on a lot. And so I find things that are meaningful to me, maybe messages I want to hear right now and feel like other people would benefit from. And so investigating those phrases is kind of the first start. And so once I have a phrase, then I start choosing type out of my cabinet. So I have a cabinet over here with tons of type in it, probably over 3,000 different pieces. And I'm not sure what's going to fit on different pages per the size of the paper and the size of the font. So I start blocking things in, loose piece of paper, and you just kind of put stuff in and see what font contrast you might like or where you're going to put the emphasis, how many colors you're going to do. Once you get that figured out, I'll either do a lockup, which is when you use pressure to put everything onto the press so it holds still. That's when you get your grid established and all the leading and the kerning and all that. Or sometimes I'll go on the computer and I do digital versions. And so I have all of my fonts basically in a digital format as well. So I can do endless mock-ups with color and arrangement, figure out paper interactions, or if I'm going to do overlapping transparent ink, all that kind of jazz. Some inks are transparent, and so that's going to show paper through. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want the inks to overlap because that creates a shift in luster or it creates different color effects. And then different papers have different textures. I mean, there's different tooth, kind of a weave to different papers, which will
Yeah.
hit the type and the ink differently. So you're kind of making all these choices as best you can. There's definitely an accidental nature to the whole thing. You just
Sure.
kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
But you have a clear idea. You know, that 85% is kind of what I'm going for. And then you do proofs and remix ink as needed, change arrangements and make it really sing and tight. And then a lot of times you hand ink it, hand press it, do that 50 times. If there's a second color, you tear it all down, you do another arrangement, and then ink that and press that 50 more times on top.
So when it comes to choosing the font.
Yeah. Where do you start?
Yes.
Right? Some of it's space occupation. You want to work with standard paper sizes, so you'd have to use a certain amount of space for it to feel full and well used, activated. So that's a general starting point. But you're kind of choosing if you want anywhere on the spectrum of type contrast. Either you want all your type to be very similar and feel like it's in a family. So for instance, it's all bold, or it's all sans serif, so there's no feet on it. Or if you want to push that contrast, you could say, well, I have some type that's really, really thin, but I'm also going to use type that's heavy, maybe to emphasize a word. Or stuff that's friendly and rounded, or I'm going to contrast that with something that's sharp and rigid and more exciting, or plain versus italic. So you're playing with all these type contrasts, trying to decide what presents the message best, but also occupies the space. Because the reality is, a lot of this is an act of compromise. You've only got so many letters, you've only got so many fonts,
Right.
and if you don't have it, I have to carve it or order it in, and that creates more time expense or resources. So you make the call on what's most important, type contrast or a little bit of compromise there to get the right amount of space used.
Yeah. Okay, you just mentioned that sometimes if you don't have it, you carve it.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother skill. And did you already have that skill, or did you have to learn it? And
Yeah.
how do you do it?
I had already done some printmaking in the past, and I had taught some printmaking classes. So I was kind of aware of the basic process as relief printing. And I use the same thing to do blocks here. I use linoleum blocks. You can do a transfer. If I'm using like historic type, I can print that off, reverse it, and do a transfer of the block, and then I carve out the non-printable space, and then you make that the height of the type so it all prints consistently. And there's no undo button here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's you do it right, or you spend an hour fixing it and then try to do it right another time.
Yes. Okay, so start to finish, how long does a typical piece take? At
Yeah.
least for that first go round.
Well, I tend to say it takes me about 2 weeks from start to finish, from like the conception of a print until the thing is ready to post and sell. And that's mock-ups, that's research, that's figuring out color, that's altering type if we need to do that. And sometimes I'll have multiple prints running at a time, because you may have like one color printed on this one and another color printed on this one. This one's still drying, but you can do the second layer on that kind of thing, or paper needs trimmed. So there's multiple pieces running at a time, but generally about one concept every other week.
Okay, bear with me because this is a weird question, but I want to know, if you had to describe yourself in a font, what font would you be?
Oh, I love it. That's fantastic. I would probably be, I really like French Clarendon letters, which are the ones that have the really heavy tops and bottoms. They're kind of like the Western fonts.
Yeah.
But I think they're funky and they're fun. They're, they're not formal, but they're not always casual. And there's a lot of different things you can do with it. And yeah.
What's the best part of creating a piece?
I think the best part is that, I kind of mentioned already, it's a physical thing. It's an artifact. There is an actual piece that marks the moment, right? It's there for time, and it's there for people to have in their homes or whatnot. And, I've got files of things I've designed 20 years ago that I never look at again. They're tucked away in a hard drive, but this stuff will exist as long as someone takes care of it. And we still find printed ephemera, from hundreds of years ago. And that's exciting stuff that legacy can live on through a physical, actual thing. With all of its imperfections, with all of the problems, I think there's a beauty still there, right? It's human.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. What has art taught you about yourself?
I think it's taught me that the stakes are much lower sometimes than I imagined them to be. I think that especially when I was younger, and I see this in other young makers, it can be so intimidating to like paint on a brand new canvas, because that canvas spent 30 bucks, you know, buying that thing and this paint and this time. But the only way to make something better is to dive in and invest in that thing. And if you go after it, you're more likely to make something nice than not, right? And that just gets you ready for the next thing. Even if it's not great, even if it doesn't get the A or it doesn't sell well or whatever, all you have to do is get over that little hurdle in order to keep moving forward. And so stop putting the pressure on yourself to make something that's phenomenal or that's a home run every time. Just make something great for now with whatever time you have, whatever resources, and then go from there.
That one hit. Like I needed that today. Daniel, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for creating and for carrying on this beautiful art. And I hope that you continue to educate as well, because man, this is an art form that I hope continues for a long, long time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For more information, find Hoosier Type Co. on Instagram.
Arts in Focus on PBS Fort Wayne is funded in part by the Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne,